Good evening, guys. I'd like to talk to you tonight about where we're going for week three and then finish up too by looking at a little review of what went on in week two. Week three now is going to be pretty big. It's full of stuff, okay? And we're going to start looking at what a lot of people said in their introductions and in their subsequent discussion posts and say later the week and week two. A lot of people mentioned they wanted to learn more about ethical methods, ethical procedures, ethical philosophies. What's behind all this? So why do people make the decisions that they do, and why do they do some of the things that they do? So now we're going to start looking at some of the philosophies and some of the theories and some of the positions behind the ethical decisions that we make. And a lot of these go way back, and they have their roots in philosophies, in societal morals, in religion, in legal theory, going back centuries, and they've all been developed within our cultures and our societies over the years, and of course have worked their way into business where we are studying them in particular. So I'd like to go through just very quickly some of the base philosophies we're going to be talking about this week and what they're all about, and just to make sure that we introduce them in a way that helps the reading make a little bit more sense, because some of it can get a little ponderous, a little weighty this week. But basically, what we want to start out with is the first thing is utilitarianism, utilitarian ethics. And what is that all about? Well, utilitarian ethics refers basically to what we call a consequentialist or a results-based approach to ethical theory. And that's quite simply saying, look, it's the result that counts. It's accomplishing the greatest good for the greatest number of people. How we accomplish that good is not the critical issue. If somebody gets hurt along the way, for instance, if we maybe cut a few corners and don't do the right things, but we get the right result, and in the end, the right thing was accomplished, the greatest good for the greatest number of people, well, then the idea is that it's the result that matters more than the method. I'm going to contrast that with the next theory you're going to see, which is more what we call a universalist approach. To use another $10 word, a deontological approach, a duty-based approach, meaning quite simply that it's the flip side of what we just talked about. It is doing the right thing no matter what, and whatever happens, happens because we have chosen what is the right thing to do. The consequences may be a little not what we wished for or not what the whole group wished for, but as long as we've done the right thing, then we have taken the right ethical approach. You can see these are quite different from each other, yet you can see, I'm sure, in your own lives, in your own businesses, where this kind of approach has been used, where the universalist kind of approach has been used, where the utilitarian kind of approach has been used. Happens all the time. Um, you notice too the literature this week's going to talk about rights. The rights have two foundations: legal or moral rights, what we call natural rights, as opposed to legal rights. And I want to be very clear that the book talks about it in two ways: positive and negative. Doesn't mean good or bad in that sense. What it means is a positive rights, essentially you have a right to do something or a right to have something. A negative right is you have a right not to do something. You have a right to be protected from somebody else doing something, okay? Positive and negative rights have nothing to do with good or bad. It has to do with proaction, reaction, that kind of thing. Okay, so that's another thing to remember. We're also going to talk about justice, and in our case, in study of ethics, justice primarily means procedure. Was everything that needed to be considered considered? Has everything been done fairly? Are there issues of compensation? Fairness is the key word when talking about justice in the ethics context. Fairness and procedure. Some people would like to use the term due process. Another thing we want to talk about this week is in the whole study, I'm looking down at my notes here to make sure I don't forget. Ethical relativism. What does that mean? That quite simply is, hey, not everything is the same in every situation, according to probably most of us. Uh, we might use a different approach in a different situation, right? Sometimes we'll use that results-based approach. Other times we'll insist on doing the right thing, and the outcome is what it is. Is this necessarily good? We'll say, well, it's all relative. It all depends. That's what we're talking about. And another one I'll begin introducing to you this week too is this whole idea of social responsibility. Who do we have a responsibility for as a business relates very strongly to the stakeholder analysis you did last week. And it's a very important concept. And you hear that discussed now in terms of, say, corporate social responsibility. Do corporations have responsibilities that go beyond what exists for their stockholders? Which brings me to a point I wanted to make about the week 2 discussion board. Number one, thank you. Everyone's participating. Everything's great. We've got a lot of participation, a lot of entries, a lot of interesting comments, and I enjoy the fact that people are asking questions back and forth to each other. This is great. This is what it's supposed to be like. This is what I want you to do. And procedurally, make sure, I saw a lot of posts today, which is fine. It's great. It's wonderful. I know I do a lot of my classwork on Sundays too. If you can, get your posts in earlier in the week, though, so that everyone has a chance to participate, and so that I'm not the only one reading and then commenting. Back to my reason for making this aside, though. Notice today, towards the end of the discussion, people were coming in. Little confusion between the composition of groups last week. Stakeholder versus stockholder. Stockholders, remember, they are the owners of a corporation. They have voting rights. They own the business. Okay? Stakeholders are quite different. Stakeholder is anybody who has an interest in the operation of the business. So a stakeholder might not be, and most likely is not, a stockholder. A stakeholder could be your employees. Stakeholders could be your suppliers. Stakeholders can be the community. Stakeholder can be your employees' families. Stakeholders can be the government. Stakeholders could even be your competitors. Okay? They do not necessarily have an ownership interest in your business. Common mistake. But I think what you'll find as we go through the work, the stakeholder comes into the ethical realm of thinking almost more than the stockholder, even though as managers we have that fiduciary responsibility, that duty to manage the owner's business well. What we're seeing is the interrelationship of factors and how the stakeholder analysis is really important. So I hope to be a little more active this week. Last week was the first week of the new semester, and as in any startup like that, things can get a little wild and a little crowded, and hopefully we'll settle back into a more normal pattern this week, and I'll be with you a little more. And I am making every effort to catch up on all the grading. Make sure you use the Blackboard shell to submit your work. There's a case study this week about, yes, Walmart, the all-pervasive, all-present Walmart. It's an interesting case. I really looking forward to people's answers, and I want to thank everybody for their work in the past. Make sure you use that Blackboard shell to get it into me. I notice now there's a couple I have to go hunt down because people sent things through me to me through email, and that's just a little bit adds one more step to the process. Please send your work through Blackboard. It makes it better for everybody. Okay, thanks for your attention, and I hope to hear more from you, and you'll hear more from me later this week. Thank you.